Thank you.
Emily, I've clicked the button, so once you can confirm that it is live streaming, we can start the meeting formally.
Thanks, Steve. I'll just have a look for you. Yeah, that's working.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. Okay, Chair, you should be good to go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to December's Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Authorities meeting. Yet again, we are doing this as a virtual meeting, as a standard practice. This meeting is being recorded, so that everyone is aware of that fact, and it is also being broadcast on YouTube for anybody who wishes to join in. My first duty this morning is to just recognise and thank members for the moment's silence that we had earlier in recognition of Councillor Ian Doggett, who died recently, who was a sitting member of this authority. I would like to welcome in his replacement from Torquay, who is Councillor Lee Howell. I don't know whether he's managed to be with us today. If he hasn't, it will
Chair, we have received apologies from Councillor Howgate.
Fine, thank you. I could have done that under. Thank you, Steve. So hopefully he will be joining us in a more positive format very shortly. So that then leads me on to item 1, which is apologies for. Oh, sorry, just one point. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not speaking, would you please have your microphones off and also your videos? I will keep mine on. I think the clerk is probably keeping his on so that members can see. So if we now could go into apologies. Oh, sorry, one final point. If you wish to speak, if you could indicate in the chat box, I will call you as I pick those up. Thank you very much. So could I ask, have we had any apologies this morning?
Chair, we've received apologies for this meeting from Councillors Napper, Eastman and Howgate, and also Alison Hernandez.
Thank you very much. That then takes us on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October. May I sign those as a true record? I'll take that as a positive. Thank you. That will be done as and when it's possible to do. That then takes us on to part 1. Sorry, takes on to item 3, which is items requiring urgent attention. I have none. Part 1, open committee. Item 4, questions and petitions from the public. There are none. Addresses, item 5, addresses by representative bodies. There are none. Item 6, questions from members of the authority. There are none. That takes us on to item 7, which are minutes of committees. Could I call on Councillor Redmond, please, to move the minutes of his Community Safety and Corporate Planning meeting on pages 9 to 12 in our papers, which was held on the 14th of October. And maybe you might want to give an update on your. Oh no, I'll save that one for later. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. Members, thank you for the opportunity to present in the committee report. We've had 2 meetings close together. This report is for the October meeting. Both were updates. You will see some detail under item 8 of the agenda today. Committee felt it important that you all had the chance to see the update presented to us. During our meeting, we made a number of points for action. We've requested a glossary of acronyms to help everyone understand the fire service terms. This can be applied for all meetings. We asked officers to provide a table with RAG status to allow quick tracking of points in both our regular Safer Together updates and the Grenville recommendations. We discussed how we might be able to help our local constituent authorities be more aware of fire-related issues when it comes to planning applications and inspections, like those highlighted in the Grenfell report. When it comes to planning, we discussed how our role here can help influence plans and make new properties safer. The sooner we build and further empower our inspection teams, the better. We requested officers find a way to keep members updated on local issues to help them be better informed. With this, we also discussed creating some briefing notes, initially around the Safer Together programme items, like the pay for availability and the data digital transformation. I look forward to working with officers to develop these to help authority members, new and long-standing. As chair of the CSCP committee, and with a view to developing member involvement, I'm hoping to find a way to make it easier for members to suggest areas that the committee might want to review. I hope to add an agenda item that will provide members an opportunity to request reports. Suggestions can then be investigated by officers and the chair, as long as they fit under our terms of reference and will not dramatically impact officer time. We could build on the committee and member impact. I know from our governance review that members are keen to ensure our committees are effective. Chair, thank you for your time. I'm happy to present this report and will be happy to answer any questions should members have them.
Thank you for that, Councillor Redmond. I think I heard you say that you were moving the recommendations or moving your report. I have nobody indicating that they wish to speak to the contrary on that. So can I take that?
I'll second. Jeff, I'll second.
And thank you very much indeed, Jeff. Councillor Trail, appreciate that. Members, if there are nobody dissenting, we accept those. So if there's anybody dissenting, which I can't see anyone, we'll take that as taken. Thank you very much indeed. That then brings us on to the Human Resources Management and Development Committee on pages 13 to 18. Could I call on Councillor Hannaford, please, to move the minutes of his meeting held on the 21st of October. Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to associate myself entirely with Councillor Redmond's comments. You'd see we had a very busy meeting because we were playing catch up from the pandemic period. And again, I urge members to please come forward and scrutinise what we've done and also bring forward any work that they would think we need to look into. So on that note, happy to move the minutes and any points and recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, who was seconding that?
Councillor Linda VJ.
Thank you, Linda, and welcome.
Chair, it's Ron Pears. I've got an amendment on the bottom of 13.
Could you, just for speed, give us the page number, please?
Chair, if it helps, the purpose of the minutes being here is not to be signed or agreed as a correct record. It's merely to be adopted by the authority. If there is an amendment, the appropriate place for that to be raised would be at the next meeting of the committee, when they go forward to be signed as a correct record.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. So if there are no other comments and no dissension, we can take that as agreed. Thank you very much indeed. That then takes us on to 7C, which is Audit and Performance Review Committee on pages 19 to 24. Could I call on the chair of the committee, Councillor Healy, please, to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November?
Yes, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd like to move the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 19th of November. Thank you very much.
And do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second Councillor Buchan.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Buchan. Appreciate that. And if there's anybody wishing to comment on them, if not, take that as read. Thank you very much indeed. That then takes us on to item 8 on our agenda, which is the Safer Together programme, update on implementation of service delivery operating model decisions, and that's on our pages 25 to 36. I felt it was very important that this was on the agenda for this meeting and that we held this meeting, because we are very nearly through to the first year since we made our decisions back in January, but January of this year. I was going to say last year. It feels like that sort of year, doesn't it? It has been an amazing year with lots of challenges out there for all of the communities for all of us, let alone for the blue light services. So I'd like to call on the Chief Fire Officer, please, to take us through his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members and colleagues. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this paper, just to recap on probably the most significant changes that the service has put in place in recent times. But just before I go through some of the examples of progress, I did just want to thank all of my officers and support from members for us making so much progress, as the Chair said, during dealing with COVID as well. So it's been a very, very busy year. A lot of officers have worked very, very hard this year, and in very difficult and strange circumstances, as we all appreciate. So I think there's been some pretty impressive progress, but I'll go through that, and also some frustration that I think I'd quite like to just expand on in discussion. So just by way of recap, as the Chair outlined, 10th of January, the Fire Authority made a series of resolutions following the public consultation that we ran in 2019. Those recommendations are shown in paragraph 2.2 on page 26. And again, I'll go through these in turn, so I won't reiterate them now. But the importance of those decisions in January, I think, shouldn't be underestimated. Clearly, there was a significant amount of public concern. There was a huge response in terms of feedback, and the authority took some of that feedback into account in determining what recommendations were going to be adopted by the service. That will play out, I think, positively for us in our next inspection, because as you can see from paragraph 1.1, the Fire Service Inspectorate, Her Majesty's Inspectorate Constabulary, do expect us to be aligning resources to risk, and that our efficiency required improvement, and this reduction in vehicles and fire estate will have no doubt positively influenced that. So in terms of the specifics, starting with paragraph 3.1, deferral of day crewing at Barnstable, Exmouth and Paynton. There was some good progress made. If you remember, members had agreed to defer that pending discussions with the Fire Brigades Union, as indicated. Initially, there was some very good progress that was made, and that surrounded the introduction of a day duty system and the pay for availability element that Pete Bond will talk about a little bit later. But because of lockdown, that meant that the FBU were reluctant to continue to engage further during the period of dealing with COVID. Whilst not necessarily agreeing with that, as a service, we've pushed on and continue to make progress. We've recruited additional firefighters on new contracts. We have an external recruitment process that will be running next year. And we've also beefed up our crewing pool, which gives us the flexibility to provide gaps, cover for gaps in service. In addition, there's some discussions that are ongoing about the ability for us and the benefits of centralising leave and training, which means that overhead doesn't sit at individual watch level; it sits at station level. That's another way in which we can gain the flexibility that we need to do. And the last point on this particular item, which I think is absolutely key, and it's something that members were supportive of, I think you'll see a lot more of this in the future, where we use roving vehicles to match resources to risk, and that risk will change during the day and at different times of the week. And so what we've been able to do is develop a software program that allows us to forecast where those vehicles would generate best effect. Now, just to remind everybody that these are additional vehicles that are permanently crewed or crewed when they're deployed. And that will help us do a whole range of additional activities to this item. The closure of Bodily Fire Station, that has been completed.
Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're breaking up a bit. Can I suggest you turn your video off, and that might help with the audio?
Thanks, Steve. Is that better?
Yes, it does sound much better. Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Steve. So the second item, in terms of closure of Bodily Salterton Fire Station, that has been completed in full. Crews have been amazing. They've relocated to Exmouth, and the station has now been sold, and capital receipt, as indicated, paragraph 3.9, is there. Relocation of Topsham Fire Station. I'm pleased to report that Topsham Fire Station has now been completed in terms of relocation of crews and vehicles. So Station 60 now hosts one of the vehicles that was previously mobilised from Topsham Fire Station, and the other is at Middlemore. Both are now operational, and members will be aware of the current work that's taking place to consider disposal of Topsham Fire Station within the remit of what the authority is legally able to do with that. Replacement of the third fire engines at Bridgewater, Taunton, Torquay and Yeovil. Bit of a mixed picture on this. We're due to have all of this completed by the end of January. The supplier has had some impact in terms of COVID that's had a knock-on impact on us. We did want this implemented by the end of the year, but it's not been possible. But nevertheless, there have been some progress made on some of the other stations. So we're slightly off track on that, but that will be completed within the next month. The removal of the second fire engines at Crediton, Linton, Martock and Totnes is completed. And introduction of variable fire engine availability dependent on risk. Members will remember that we had, back to HMI's comments, that we needed to make sure we match our resources to risk better, rather than have a single resourcing strategy at all times of the day and night. When risk is increased, we should increase our resources. And likewise, when risk is decreased, then HMI would expect our resources to be decreased. That is in the process of being implemented. That is key to pay for availability. We have had some difficulties, it is true to say, in terms of pay for availability, in terms of securing an agreement with the Fire Brigades Union. We've had very positive engagement with the FRSA, and we do have a collective agreement with the FRSA. And irrespective of the lack of an agreement with the Fire Brigades Union, we are in the process of rolling this out to staff, because our staff are saying that they want it. We are offering that to staff. it is on a voluntary basis, because otherwise, we would need to change contracts to force the issue. We're not minded to do that. We would like a collective agreement with the Fire Brigades Union, but for a number of reasons that they will be able to explain, that is not something that they wish to do at this stage. Nevertheless, we continue to push on. We've got a lot of stations that are interested, and paragraph 3.23 gives a sense of where that is. And also, members have made financial provision for this. So, members have agreed for this to be offered, and it is being taken up by a significant number of fire stations. And I think as more stations come online, they'll see the benefits of this, and I think that will continue. I think what I will do is, that was all I wanted to say. I'm just going to bring in Pete Bond, just to give a bit more of an update on the negotiations, because I think members might be interested in that. So if that's okay, Chair, I'll hand over to ACO Bond.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, members. I'm going to leave my video off for the sake of the bandwidth. Just pick up on that point around the negotiations. Bit of history. We commenced informal negotiations on both the pay for availability and potential new whole-time duty systems 18 months ago, and now when we considered the initial proposals around the Safer Together programme. Following the Fire Authority meeting in January, we put those negotiations onto a formal footing, and as the Chief outlined, the whole-time duty negotiations progressed quite well, but got truncated by the COVID issues for the FBU's ability to actually consult with their members on a station-by-station basis. With regards to pay for availability, we negotiate locally with both the Fire Brigades Union and the Fire and Rescue Services Association. So there is some difference there in terms of national negotiations, where only the Fire Brigades Union are the recognised collective bargaining unit. So we were able to negotiate locally an agreement with the Fire and Rescue Services Association. The same agreement was put to the Fire Brigades Union, and they asked for it to be progressed to a national level. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it took some time for the National Joint Secretaries to agree a date when we could get together to have that negotiation, which happened at the beginning of September. Following that meeting over a couple of days, we did not reach a collective an agreement. So there were still some points outstanding between both the service and the Fire Brigades Union over pay for availability, mainly over some wording within the agreement around crewing levels, and they had some concerns over the pensionability of the pay for availability payment, and wanted confirmation that that would be in place. Following the national negotiations, we continued to talk locally. Certainly the local officials that we were speaking with were keen to try and get a collective agreement, but they were clear that they would only seek to get the agreement of their members if their local executive committee agreed to take that point forward. Following some rewording, following some confirmation around the pensionability of the payments, we were able to make a final offer to the Fire Brigades Union in October. Unfortunately, their local executive committee rejected it and did not ask their local members for their own opinion. So the service worked with the stations directly to understand whether or not the remainder of the on-call service, what their appetite was for pay for availability. And a series of station visits was undertaken throughout November by the business change managers, which meant that every single on-call section was visited and asked their opinion. So we know now that there are 45 of our stations that wish to take up the pay for availability model. There are a further 23 that are basically a maybe. So they are just seeking some further confirmation around what the contract looks like and how it would impact on them. And there are only 11 of our stations that are actively saying no, they do not want to take up the pay for availability duty system at this point in time. And that can be for various reasons. So the way this works now is because we don't have a collective agreement with all of those representative bodies, we work on a station-by-station basis to say that they can move voluntarily onto the new duty system. There has to be 100% agreement by all members on that station. So if there is one person on the station that does not want to move, then we won't enforce that. It has to be a voluntary agreement by all of them. But we do know that those 45 stations that we will now prioritise and move forward, we've grouped them into sections, and we will be rolling that out on a month-by-month basis to enable our systems within human resources and in ICT to be able to accommodate that. If we tried to do them all at once, we would probably cause ourselves an implementation problem. So we've already put one group on at the beginning of October. The next group starts at the beginning of January, and then we'll be rolling out groups on a month-by-month basis over the next 6 months. I'm hopeful that as more and more stations come on board and we get a better understanding about how the pay for availability system works, then the majority of those 23 maybe stations will start to all get 100% agreement, and we'll see more of those come on board. And we'll obviously continue to have conversations with those stations that are currently saying no, just to try and understand what their situations are and if we can alleviate any of their concerns and encourage them to see the positivity in the pay for availability system. And just finally, as a reminder to members, the key elements of pay for availability in terms of benefits, certainly for the service, it means that we are looking at a more guaranteed method of availability, because there is a level of requirement for each individual to make sure that they are available and turning into stations when they're called. So we get that guarantee that we know that we've got available fire engines. From the individual's perspective, the pay is increased from around 70 pence per hour to over £2 per hour for their availability. So we get a serious increase in pay, but we're also giving a much more flexible contract so that people don't have to give 84 or 63 hours cover per week. They can vary that in a more flexible way, which means they can have a better control over their work-life balance. So overall, there are benefits all round, and certainly officers have appreciated members' support and agreement to the investment in pay for availability, which is being seen as certainly a pioneering duty system across the sector. We've had a lot of inquiries from other fire and rescue services about how it's working, and we've provided updates through the NFCC, National Fire Chiefs Council, for other services to see if they want to take that forward. I'll finish there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that very comprehensive update for members. I'm now going to open this up for general discussion, and I'm going to come back initially to Lee Redmond and ask him if he wishes to add anything further to the comments that he made at the beginning of the meeting. Then I've got Pam Buchan, Councillor Pam Buchan, who's indicated she wishes to speak. Members, if you do, could you just put it in the chat line or indicate by putting on your video so I can see that you wish to speak, and then I'll be able to call you. So, Councillor Redmond, would you like to add anything further to what you were talking about earlier, please?
Chair, thank you. Many of the members will of the CSCP committee would have already had the opportunity to drill down into some of these points, and I think it's really exciting that, and I support the comments of the Chief and Pete Bonds in relation to how well this programme is being moved forward. One of the points that I made reference to when we spoke was the fact that there are so many different streams going forward that we requested as a committee, we suggested that there might be an opportunity to have a RAG rating. As councillors, like things kept as simple as possible, and if we're drawn to the red one, so that's a request that we've made. And there were a number of points made which I'll leave to my colleagues to bring up in a minute, but one point that I made in relation to the contracts which I think is important to highlight here. As Pete Bond has indicated, the pay for availability scheme, and this is me speaking as an ex-on-call firefighter, is a really exciting opportunity. But we also have to remember that for a station to go across to the new system, there needs to be 100% support for that from members of the station. And an important point to be made, and I know that both the Chief and Pete Bond support me in this, that we want to try to avoid any unnecessary pressure on members of the station. There are some members that are on what they call legacy contracts, which they feel are better than what the new contracts would be. So all I'm asking for, and the question to Pete is, do you support the fact that we're not looking to put any unnecessary pressure on individual members of stations to adopt the P4A? But what we're looking to do is to roll it out in the best and most effective way we can. Chair, thank you for the presentation, Pete and Chief. Thank you.
So I've got Pam Buckham who wishes to speak, and Sue Mount Stevens. Could I call on Pam first, please, and then Sue?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question about the roving vehicles, which was one of the things when we went through the consultation that people felt was probably one of the least clear things about what it would look like in practice. So I really welcome the update, and particularly hearing about the new software to calculate a model where these will be placed. I wanted to ask for a bit more detail about how that will work, what kinds of factors it's taken into account, and how it works, like in real time, or what sort of timescale it works on if not real time, and also how it fits with the prevention and protection work, because we talked originally about the roving vehicles being deployed to do that work. So how is, not exactly mathematically, but sort of logistically, how does that all fit together?
Pete Bond, do you want to answer that one, or leave Hal?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Chair, if the Chief's okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Buchan. So the roving vehicle situation is heavily aligned to both the whole-time duty system and the pay for availability system, because effectively what we're trying to do is release the resources of our frontline crews to deliver a more dynamic response, both for incident response and for prevention and protection, as you mentioned. So we've basically split this down into 3 key phases. The first point will be to try and release capacity within the whole-time duty system, where we have more than enough people on duty on a shift-by-shift basis. We will look to aggregate those people that we don't need on their home station, if you like, into a crew that can be used on a roving vehicle. So a good example is the Plymouth area, where we have 3 whole-time stations, 3 watches, all have a minimum number of, or a standard crew that they would need to have on a day-by-day basis. Any numbers over and above that, we can amalgamate into a crew onto a roving appliance that can then work within the Plymouth and surrounding area to deliver more protection work, in particular enhancing our building safety inspections and making sure that businesses are compliant with fire safety law. They'll also be able to support prevention work in terms of partnership working around home fire safety visits and signposting and safeguarding issues which may come up. And will also be available for immediate response as part of our standard mobilisation. So basically several wins in terms of using that latent capacity within the workforce. We see that as being able to be rolled out very early in the new year, once we've put through our on-call to whole-time recruitment process and filled some of the vacancies that we've had over the last couple of months, because that will enhance our establishment on all of those whole-time stations. The second phase then will be looking at the areas where we've got a combination between both the whole-time and the on-call sections. So specifically North Devon and East Somerset, where we would seek to utilise latent capacity at both Hartsville and Yeovil stations, and supplement that with on-call availability, where we have people that are seeking to give us more cover, but also to enhance their own positions as on-call firefighters and understand how they can support prevention protection work. So this is less likely to be on a regular day-by-day basis. This will be more on a dynamic risk-assessed basis, which speaks more to the point the Chief was making around the dynamic coverage tool. So that piece of software has been developed by an external group, company rather, but is now being enhanced by our own internal strategic analysis team to really understand how it works against our integrated risk management plan. That will enable us to deploy those roving appliances, particularly into the more rural areas, as the risk changes on a day-by-day basis. What we will need to do is do some forward planning around how the prevention protection work fits together with that. We obviously want to make sure that we are delivering the best productivity in all of those areas on a regular basis. And the final method of using the roving appliances will be to utilise those 11 second appliances that we've moved from 24-hour cover to night cover only. So the point made in the paper around risk-dependent availability speaks to these particular appliances. So there'll be 11 fire engines that become more available to us in the day that we can use on a more flexible basis. And the way we see that working is less of a fully crewed appliance or fire engine, but more on the basis of using it as a support to incidents when required, but giving the availability of on-call crew members to go and deliver prevention and protection in their local areas. And again, that will be on a risk-assessed basis, and it will depend upon some of the seasonal issues. We may need to focus, for example, as we move into the spring on wildfire, and start to think about how we can educate farmers around swaling and the sorts of issues that causes us. And then obviously through into the summer season with barbecues, into the winter season again around bonfires. So we've got a regular approach which we can take to utilise those roving appliances to help us reduce risk in various ways. Hope that answers the question, Chair, but happy to pick up any further.
Do you have a supplementary?
No, that was great, thank you. And I think we'll really look forward to hearing how that develops as it gets put into practice.
Thank you for that question. It was very appropriate. We've got somebody on the phone. I just want to clarify who it is. On my screen, I'm seeing if it's Paula. Oh, it's Jeremy. Is that you, Percy?
Apologies, I've been struggling to get in and been unable to connect with the audio, so I'm on the phone.
Wonderful, Jeremy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just chip in if you want to say anything.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm listening, and it's interesting. Thank you.
That's lovely. So I've got Sue Mount Stevens, then I've got the Vice Chairman, and then I've got Rob Hannaford.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good morning, Sarah. I'm interested about the some stations are moving to this new system and some are not. So there's one. My first question is there a vision of the Fire Authority for all the stations to move, and over what time period? I accept that you have to get 100%, so I understand that. And are there any savings for the organisation once all stations have been moved across? And secondly, for those stations that are not moving, do you lose any of your effectiveness on being able to understand where your demand and your resources are? Thank you.
Pete Bond, do you want to answer that one? And maybe Lee might want to add a comment at the end.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So with regards to timescale for movement, certainly the 45 stations that are willing and positive about taking on paper availability, we're going to seek to move them over the first 6 months of 2021. Some of that is slightly caveated by some of the systems that we use within our human resources and ICT to enable that. But we are working with our suppliers to make sure that we can accommodate that. Confident that we can do so. With regards to the vision and the ambition of paper availability, yes, we have seen it as the primary way of recruiting and retaining our on-call firefighting workforce. For members that are new to the Fire Authority, there have been a number of reports over the last 10 years highlighting the inefficiencies of the traditional retained firefighting duty system that has been in place for a number of years, certainly since the late 70s. The main issues being that the pay is low, so the attraction rate of trying to get people onto the retained duty system is difficult. It also means that as we have progressed our prevention and protection work and reduced the incidence of fire and emergencies, it means that actual call-outs to incidents are lower, and therefore the reasons for people joining the on-call section, which is generally to serve their community and be part of that incident response, that emergency response, becomes less, and therefore they remain available to us within 5 minutes of the station, but are used on an infrequent basis, and that causes frustration and causes people to leave. So,
your car, in Mum's car, there is.
Sorry, there's somebody else who's not on mute. If you could just move to that. So, although there are a number of stations, as Councillor Redmond pointed out earlier, that have legacy contracts, and we recognise that for some people who have been with the on-call fire service for many years and given great service, that they feel reluctant to change onto something new, we are seeking to move all of our stations eventually onto the paper availability system, and that all of our new contracted firefighters that move into the on-call section will be on the basis of having that new contract, which gives them more flexibility and a better pay. I'm sorry, was there another point that you wanted me to pick up on?
Yes, there was. So whether that brought any savings regarding the effectiveness of the entire organisation once they'd all moved.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Yes. So in terms of savings, it's less of the ability to note clear cashable savings at the outset. Certainly paper availability is actually a large investment on behalf of the authority. It's increased the revenue budget because we are reimagining how we pay our on-call firefighters. So at the moment they get a retaining fee, and then that's supplemented by disturbance fees and turnout fees and various other things which are aligned to that system. We've rolled that all into one in order to make sure that we can sustain a £2 plus hour payment for availability. What we will see though is if at the moment we regularly turn over between 100 and 120 on-call firefighters every year. And if you consider that every single one of those requires an induction and a probationer training, which costs in the region of about £15,000 per firefighter, there is a huge amount of saving if we can put a stop to that kind of turnover and churn. So the longer term savings are built into maintaining that workforce. We're also seeking not to mobilise as many firefighters at once. So I'll give you an example of a call which comes into an on-call station that has one fire engine on it. At the moment, we seek to have an establishment of around 12 firefighters on that. We could be asking all 12 firefighters to turn into the station to crew the fire engine, whereas we only actually need 5 of them. So if you think about the bigger issues around environmental strategy, around road risk of people turning in, of the impact on their own businesses or perhaps their employers, there are other benefits that we see from paper availability being a far more focused, guaranteed availability model, ensuring that we get the best productivity out of the people that are working for us, but also support them in their wider work-life balance as well. Hopefully that covers that point.
Thank you. That churn is phenomenal. I had no idea. Just for clarity, because I think you said this. So new on-call fire officers who start now, they're already automatically put on the new process, are they?
So it depends on which station they go on. So if they go onto a paper availability station, yes, they will. As we pointed out earlier, it has to be 100% commitment of all the existing staff on station to move to the system to start off with. And that's because of the collective agreement issues we have with the union. That being said, the majority of our stations, as I said, are now seeking to move on to that. They recognise the benefits, and I'm comfortable and confident that we will see an increased a number of those moving forward over the next 12 months.
Thank you.
Lee Howell, Chief, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just really to reinforce the fact that what we've had in the past is a very unreliable model, an on-call model, for the reasons that Pete's outlined, and we are duty bound to resource to risk. So in certainly more of our rural areas and remote rural areas, having an incentive to guarantee cover means that we can provide a consistent level of service across the whole of Devon and Somerset, whereas it's been variable in the past. So that investment, it won't generate savings. In fact, it generates additional costs, but that allows us to match resources to risk more effectively and provide a more robust emergency service. I think in terms of areas for savings, we're looking elsewhere for those savings. We've needed to invest in the on-call service for some time, and with member support, we're able to do that now. And just really to reiterate Pete's point about the legacy contracts, we have and we intend to remove those legacy contracts. We've had similar contracts in other stations in the past, and we've migrated away from those. So the convergence point where everybody is on this new system is in sight. It will just take a bit of time to get to that point, but with the level of churn that we've had, as Pete's outlined, means we can get there more quickly. The last point really I just wanted to add is that just for general context on paper availability, generally those stations that are unwilling or not keen at this stage to move into the new model generally are in whole-time areas, and we've got pretty good cover there anyway. So in terms of your point too about effectiveness, it's the new model is more effective. The stations where we've had historical problems are more likely to be moving on to the pay for availability because it's in their interest. So as a service, we're in a better shape now than we were, if that helps.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Two final speakers so far are the Vice Chairman and then Rob Hannaford. If anybody else wishes to indicate, let me know, please. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. And morning, members. The objects of the service delivery operating model review were to improve the availability of our appliances and to release some capacity for more work in the protection and prevention areas where we knew we were not quite delivering what we should. Can I ask the Chief or Pete if are we achieving those objects? I realise that this hasn't been an exactly typical year, and so it might be difficult to quantify things as yet. But if we can't quantify things as yet, how do we think we are going to? How are we going to monitor? And could I stretch a point, perhaps, please, Chair, on the protection work? Are we releasing resources for inspections under the Grenfell programme, or are we able to improve our performance there? A lot of I don't know what buildings we have which qualify for Grenfell inspection, but across the country there are tens of thousands of leaseholders who are trapped in their premises now, with probably feeling that they're living in an unsafe environment, and they can't sell their properties and they can't afford to move. So if we could, one of the reasons they can't get any guarantees from building societies is because their buildings haven't been inspected. So if we do have any buildings in that area, it would be of enormous help to our constituents if they could be inspected. So I'm not quite sure who to ask, whether the Chief or Pete.
Chief,
Chair,
would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Vice Chair. So in terms of the first point about capacity, the roving vehicle model will generate additional capacity to do additional prevention and protection work. Absolutely. But at the same time, there's been an increase in productivity measures on operational crews. Our crews, to be fair, want to be busy. They want to help communities. They join the service because they want to make a difference. And so what we're in the process of doing is seeing how we increase that productivity on stations, and that primarily is about increasing the number of inspections that are undertaken and how those inspections are undertaken. So there has been an increase, and Pete Bond may wish to come in on that as well. The other point about inspections generally, so we have an enforcement role. So our primary interest is in enforcement and inspecting buildings, and we will sample a number of those, and we've got a risk-based inspection programme. In terms of the responsibility to ensure that a building is safe, that is for the individual homeowner or the responsible person for that building. So any issues to do with insurance or making sure that those arrangements are robust are a local matter. From our perspective, what we do is we sample, we check to see the extent to which there are trends that are emerging, and we do take enforcement activity as well. So I don't think people should be reliant on the Fire and Rescue Service to do their inspections. We do, and we will continue to do that based on a risk-based programme. But certainly in terms of providing advice in terms of what those standards should be, we're happy to signpost those to colleagues and to allow them to provide the reassurance that they need to, whether it's through their insurers or to anybody else. But the responsibility under the fire and rescue, the new Fire and Rescue Service legislation, is that for the responsible person rather than the fire service. In the past, the fire service used to do inspections and provide a certificate of conformity. Actually, now our role is very different. The responsibility is at local level. What we do is we provide the checks and balances in the same way that trading standards or the Health and Safety Executive provide support. So hopefully that helps, Councillor Wheeler. But Pete, did you want to add anything to that in terms of the risk-based inspection programme and also productivity on stations at all?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So, clearly there is further work to do. We understand that there is a national situation which is being reported on a regular basis around building safety, and certainly the Vice Chair's point around people caught in a situation where they can't sell their properties is very frustrating. I think it would be worth pointing out that the issues actually lie with the construction industry and some of the both new builds and rebuilds which take place, and the requirement for them to fully adhere with building regulations. We are only a consultee for building regulations to make sure that the plans which are being proposed fit with the requirements of whatever regulation is being used, and they do vary from place to place at times. So although the focus has been on high-rise buildings due to the Grenfell Tower fire, there are issues also with normal dwelling houses. Unfortunately, we've seen that with a new build construction in Exeter in the last 18 months, where fire spread between properties where we would not have expected that to happen. And upon investigation, it was because the compartmentation between the houses was not correctly installed, and it allowed fire spread through the roof space. So there are ongoing issues out there, and as Councillor Redmond pointed out in his initial update on the minutes of the Community Safety Corporate Planning Committee, we would welcome members' support in their local authority roles around planning and conversations with new developments about how they can help to deliver better fire safety standards within new builds and refurbishments. The final point I just pick up on from the Vice Chair was around how we can support better productivity. We do have grant funding from the Home Office to deliver what's known as Protection Uplift. And this mainly focuses around an increased number of building safety officers and increased qualifications for our existing cohort of officers. So they're better qualified to deliver our risk-based inspection programme, make sure that those business owners out there are compliant with the law. And importantly, part of that will be to focus on compliance visits, so an education and information package, rather than just focusing on enforcement. We want to help people to deliver. And again, if there are forums that members work with in their local authorities that you feel that we could support and give that kind of education package to officers, we'd be really welcome to hear about that, and we would happily support that moving forward.
Vice Chairman, do you have any supplementary?
No, very comprehensive. Thanks very much.
It certainly was. I quite agree. So could I call on Councillor Hannaford? I've then got back on wishing to ask another question before I call on Anthony Redmond. And I just ask members to look at the chat box. You'll see I've going to make a recommendation to go into our recommendations at the end of the debate, which for those that haven't got access to it, so that you've got pre-warning, the authority welcome, as a result of the discussion we've had about pay for availability, I am suggesting that the authority welcomes the progress made in the introduction of pay for availability, and thank the officers and firefighters for the work on the wider adoption of this important initiative. So could I call on Rob Hannaford, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, I can.
And I, in the first instance, I'd be happy to second your recommendation that you've just made. Earlier this week, I chaired a meeting of the Human Resources and Development Committee, which specifically looked at the annual gender pay gap report for the authority. So I would like to know, for the benefit of the whole authority today, in terms of the pay for availability, could the officers please indicate what potential effects that will have on the authority's gender pay gap, firstly, and secondly, implications on the representation of female firefighters looking to the medium to long term in terms of these HR changes. I'm hoping that it will be of a great benefit to attracting and retaining female firefighters, but I think today, Chair, in this public meeting, I think it's important that we have a public statement on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. I think I'll call on the Chief to answer that one, please. If you wish to delegate to anybody else, that's fine. At the moment, you're still on mute, sir.
Thank you, Chair. You would have thought I'd learned by now, wouldn't you? Really welcome Councillor Hannaford's question. Joe Hassel, Deputy Chief, will have a view on this. Joe's done a huge amount of work in terms of the on-call model nationally, so we're grateful to have Joe in the service with his skills and knowledge on this. In essence, what we've got is an opportunity with the flexible contracts that pay for availability creates. One of the reasons why they were designed in the way they were is to give individuals flexibility. Now, at the moment, that flexibility is not there at a local level. What that could mean is with that additional flexibility, if any individual is doing a school run and they provide cover in between the school runs, and they want to provide some cover for us, they could take a contract for us for those hours that works for them, providing that works for the service, which I'm sure we can accommodate. That should then allow a mechanism for us to recruit on an on-call station from within the talent around that station. So it certainly should enable some additional female representation within a more female firefighters to come and work for us. So that should help. It should be positive. What we want to do is we want to make sure we're giving people choice. If we give more people more choice, we increase that pool through which we are, an employer of choice. So hopefully it's a strength. It's certainly been designed in to provide that flexibility that we think certainly women will want and see us as more of an employer of choice. I don't know if Joe wanted to add anything else, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, really good question, and we had a really good debate about this at last week's HRMD. So just before I get on to pay for availability, it is worth noting for members that we have seen a really good, positive, steady rise of women applicants to our on-call workforce. So because we have constant recruitments, we recruit over 100 on-call firefighters every year. That's where we're seeing we're making real progress, and we've now got over 100 female firefighters in Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service, which is the highest number we've ever seen. So already there's some great work going on there. We do see pay for availability as a massive step change for exactly the reasons that the Chief has talked about. It's more flexible. It allows those people who have caring duties, it gives them more flexibility there. And we really see this as a great way of recruiting. So, fully supportive of the authority's position for supporting us and adopting pay for availability. Nationally, people are really interested in this. So Pete Bond's already presented on national level, and he's also looking to do that again next year. And we're getting a lot of interest from various different fire and rescue services who are actively monitoring our progress as well. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hannaford. And again, more than welcome that people are invited to HRMD in the future to discuss these really important topics. Thank you.
Absolutely right. All members are welcome to attend other committee meetings if they're not on them. So it is about widening it. Margaret Corvid has indicated she wants to speak. With your permission, Pam Buchan, I'm going to call her first and then I'll call you afterwards. And then Lee Redmond finally.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to, first of all, to echo, the really positive news that, the women firefighters is increasing. My question is there a specific recruitment campaign for women? Because I think, the flexibility afforded by pay for availability really dovetails well with caring responsibilities. And that would just be a very positive solution, to really kill two birds with one stone, to get onto this system, which provides for risk management better and also to recruit more women. Thank you.
Joe, do you want to answer that one? Joe Haskell?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Corvid. Yeah, so we have a constant process where we are trying to attract more diverse groups, so not just women applicants. We're also trying to engage with the community to increase our black and ethnic minority levels as well. Specifically for women, we have a lot of work around have a go days. So what we do is we know that some of the barriers that we've looked into are around fitness. So we put on fitness days on our fire stations and allow members of the public to come in and basically have a go at our fitness testing. So we do the various different things around strength test, bleep test, and things around that. We also do a lot of work around positive action. So we will ensure that we're going into and making people aware that we are recruiting certainly in their areas, but also that the fire service is an inclusive employer and that we're there for them. So we do a lot of work there in the communities, making sure that people are aware that we are recruiting and that we're an employer of choice. So that's ongoing. We do that all the time. We will be stepping that up for the whole time recruitment that we'll be doing early next year. So please look out for that, and we'd love members supporting that to spread the word that that's happening.
I think my screen is...
Sorry, I lost my mouse. My mouse. Do you have a supplementary question you wish to ask?
More just a supplementary suggestion. Thank you very much for that. It's really great news to hear. And also, you know, it would be great to see more women-targeted campaigns on social media, because I would be very happy to share those, you know, and I'm sure many other members would, in our community reach, because, you know, we have a lot of connections with our local areas and could maybe share them with women who might be interested. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Joe Hassel, I wonder if I could just ask you clarify one point. You talked about fitness, but you used the word beep test. I'm sure most people don't know what that means.
So thank you, Chair. For anyone who's ever tried to do it, the bleep test is basically a shuttle run where you run between 2 points and you turn and you run back the other way, and essentially the beeps get shorter and shorter, so you have to run faster and faster. So our firefighters do this as an annual fitness test at the moment, although they do have choice in other tests. So to apply for the fire service, you have to reach level 9.6. So you have to be pretty fit. And there are other fitness tests as well around strength, so that we can see that people can lift ladders and various other things. So myself and the other officers here, uniformed officers, have thankfully done our fitness testing this year as well. It's something that we pride ourselves on to make sure that we're a fit workforce. Any members who wish to take a bleep test, please let me know and I'll see if I can arrange one for you. Thank you.
Sounds very interesting. I tried it informally and it's considerably harder than you might think. But yes, any members who want to absolutely get in contact with Joe Hassel, I'm sure we can arrange that for you. Pam Buchan and then Lee Redman, please. Pam Buchan.
Thank you for the opportunity for another question. Just very quickly before that, I will sadly decline the offer of doing a bleep test. I'm not of a particular health disposition to be able to achieve that, I'm pretty sure. But I would also like to reiterate what Councillor Corvid said. If we can assist in promoting some of these equality measures and so forth, please do send to members. But my question was just arises from what Pete Bond responded to the Vice Chairman around planning and building regs, and I just wanted to check, is there anything in the planning white paper that's of interest or concern to the fire service? Did we do a response? If so, and are we monitoring what's happening as that bill gets reflected on after the consultation? Thank you.
Pete Bond, could I call on you on that one, and maybe the Chief if he wishes to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So in terms of planning, we are again a consultee. So part of that is a response to just in general. More of an interest to us is the building safety bill, which is going through, changes to the fire safety order where we have more influence, and obviously we have an enforcement role as well. In general, all those matters will be picked up through the National Fire Chiefs Council, where we have seconded officers into the working groups that are monitoring that on a national basis. So yes, we do have a comprehensive view of what's going on in all of those legislative areas.
Good morning, Amy Webb. Do you want to add something to this conversation about your colleagues?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the specific question on the planning white paper, there has been an official consultation response put forward by Blue Light Services. It was actually led by Devon and Cornwall Police, so we were glad to be engaged in that process. And it's certainly something that we need to ensure we're fully engaged with. And I'm currently looking for collaborative opportunities, particularly around construction industry levy, get the acronym right there, and kind of what was Section 106 funding to ensure we're engaged upfront in how we provide emergency services and preventative activities in new communities. So thank you for the question, and we are engaged in that process.
I wonder if I might be slightly, if I might suggest that as a part of the briefing process for members' training, I wonder if at a forum meeting you could update us on what's going on. As elected members, these are very important areas, and for many people they're dual-hatted or they sit on planning committees, and I think that value might they might bring a lot of value to their constituent authorities as a result. Thank you very much indeed for that. So then, Lee Redmond, I'm calling you as part of kind of summing up and anything that you submitted earlier or mentioned earlier about the work that you've done at your own committee and recommendations related to that, that you might want to put into our recommendations today.
Chair, thank you for the opportunity. It's really great to watch and listen to other members get involved with this, and that's that was why I was glad when you suggested this comes, because all the members will now know how exciting the Community Safety and Corporate Planning Committee can be with such diverse areas and topics to discuss. As always is the case, most of you will know that have been lucky enough to see, I do try to have an open meeting as much as possible. So I include members of the committee to be part of that, but I also welcome any non-committee members or any authority members to come along, because everyone has an opportunity to feed into our debates. So I welcome that, and hopefully the planning issue is something that is close to my heart and has been highlighted here today. As far as the members, I think your proposals have been supported, but what I will ask, obviously, is that perhaps you'd be willing to support the request to have a RAG-rated status applied to the programme, so that it will give us the opportunity to have a quick look. And as always, I welcome members of the authority to attend the Community Safety and Corporate Planning Committee, and hopefully by their involvement we'll be able to make the meetings more impactful and help shape and direct the authority. Chair, thank you for your time.
Sorry, I had some, I couldn't find my unmute button for a second. So just for a procedural process, just to make sure we're very clear about what we're moving, I'm going to move from the chair that, as printed on page 25 of our papers this morning, that the progress as outlined in this report on implementing the service delivery operating model approved by the authority on the 10th of January be noted, and the additions to which I added, which was, bear with me a second while I put. The authority welcomes the progress made on the introduction of pay for availability and thanks the officers and firefighters for the work on the wider adoption of this important initiative. And I'm wanting to put something in there about the minutes of the CSCP meeting, which hasn't come to the full authority and formal format, but the comments made by Councillor Redmond earlier. And I'm just calling on the clerk if he can help me with that particular item, please.
Chair, if it would help, when the minutes come before the authority, I think you will see that they do capture the point that Councillor Redmond has made in relation to his request for future update reports to include a RAG rating of against the Safer Together programme and any other initiatives, and I'm sure officers will be acting on that anyway.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm just asking the clerk if he's got anything that he wishes to advise us on that before I ask for a seconder and go to the vote.
Chair, but I've already said I'll second your proposal.
You had and I'd forgotten. So Rob, thank you very much. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add to the advice that Steve Yates has just given, and obviously Steve has seen the minutes of the draft minutes of the Community Safety Corporate Planning Committee meeting that's just been held in the last few days, which aren't before the authority yet. So that deals with the recommendation with regarding the RAG status. So I don't think you need to include it in your proposal for this meeting.
Thank you. And I think we've got that covered. I'm just going to ask if there are any amendments anybody wishes to make. And if not, I'm going to go to the vote. So could I ask members to indicate by thumbs up, putting your cameras back on and putting a hand up, but in a positive way that you're in favour of this one, please?
Chairman, not being able to do that myself, I can say absolutely I am in favour and supporting what you're recommending. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll be joining a lot of other hands and thumbs up. I think I'm right in saying that that is a majority.
Chair, that looks as if it is carried. I'm not seeing anyone either dissenting or abstaining. That might be the easiest way to do it, is to ask if anyone wishes to abstain or vote against.
I just wanted to get into give members an opportunity to show that they're actually attending and doing a positive vote, because I was fairly certain to be confident on the response. So anybody against, please show. Linda, you're not against, you're for, I know you are. Are you? And is anybody abstaining? So I think that was unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, members. That then takes us on to item 9 on our agenda, which is confirmation of members' allowance schemes for 21-22 on pages 37 to 52. Could I call on the clerk to the authority, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report that we have to bring to the authority. The regulations require that the authority sets its scheme of allowances payable to members prior to the start of the financial year for which it is to apply. So this is the scheme of allowances for next year. Current year, that had been subject to a review by an independent person. Members will recall that report was considered in February of this year. As part of that report, members agreed to maintain the existing arrangement whereby annually the members' allowances are uprated by the pay award applied to local authority Green Book staff. So that is still in place, and this paper is suggesting that that remains the case. The authority also considered the recommendation of the independent review that it reviewed the special responsibility allowance that was paid to members who are non-executive directors on the board of Red 1. So this paper sets out the findings of that review together with 3 potential options for the authority to consider in terms of the level of special responsibility that might be applied for that role. Finally, as well, in section 4, this paper covers the allowances paid for co-optees. This relates to the independent persons appointed in to support the standards committee, and in accordance with the requirements to have at least 1 independent person. This authority has 2, together with the external independent we've made onto the local pension board, and specifically in 4.2, there's a suggestion that those co-optee positions are also covered by the automatic uprating mechanism, rather than the allowance having to be specifically looked at this year. So other than that, Chair, there are no major changes to the scheme of allowances. The recommendations are all set out at the beginning of the report on page 38, and sorry, on page 37, I beg your pardon. And the authority will need to make a decision with regards to the 3 options on the special responsibility allowance for the Red 1 non-executive directors. Happy to take any questions, Chair, if necessary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pearson. So, as Devon and Somerset county councils and the PCCs, Police and Crime Commissioners, are up for election next May, this is an annual review and it's part of standard items that have to be considered by the authority. I am going to move from the chair that we accept the status quo. If an incoming authority next June decides otherwise, that is their right. So could I call, so what I would be formally moving is on page 37, as the clerk mentioned, recommendation A, B, and B little 1, striking out little 2, little 3, and accepting C, D, and E. If anybody wants me to read that out, I'm more than happy to do that. So A is that the authority confirms the rate of basic and special responsibility allowances to be paid during 21-22 financial year, as set out on table 1 of section 2 of this report, subject to any automatic annual uprating.
There's an F on page 38.
Sorry. I need to get onto page 38. Sorry, so B was that the authority determines a special responsibility allowance payable for 21-22 to the authority appointed non-executive directors of the Board of Red 1 Limited should be set at the current, which is little 1, the current level of £6,305, which is consistent with the rationale set out in paragraph 1.11.1 of the report. C, that the authority confirms the rates of co-optees allowances to be paid during 21-22 financial year set out in paragraph 4.1 of this report. D, that the co-optees allowance is automatically uprated annually in accordance with any proposal agreed by the National Joint Council for Local Government Services, the Green Book, and that the clerk of the authority be authorised to amend the approved scheme accordingly. E, that the authority confirms the rates of reimbursement, travel and assistance allowance in accordance with in period for 21-22, as set out in 5.1, 5.2, and I'm just looking at page 38. And F on page 38, apologies, I haven't turned the page, that the clerk of the authority be authorised to publicise the details of the scheme so confirmed in one or more local newspapers circulating in the area served by the authority. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Could I call on the Vice Chairman?
Yeah. Yes, please, Chair. Very happy to second. And I would just like to say a few words about the non-executive directors on the Board of Red 1 level of remuneration. If could draw members' attention to paragraph 3.3 on page 41, where the independent consultants report commented that the expectation was that the workload for the non-executive directors would settle down. I think that this last year has been anything but normal, and the settling down process has probably got even less settled down than it was before. So I think allowing another year for things to settle down would be prudent. And also, I take on board your point that that things can be reviewed following the elections. We do have an election in Plymouth next year, but fortunately, I'm not involved in it. I don't think any of our members are involved. So I'd just like to add that to the conversation, and happy to support your recommendation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. I've not got anybody indicating they wish to speak. Could I just...
Chair, can I just put just a clarification with you? So, I mean, the counterpoint to that is then, because, you know, we don't know if any of us are coming back, you know, who opt for election, that's an open-ended thing. But I just get a bit concerned. We've seen, for example, at Devon County Council, we went 10, 11 or even 12 years without improving any of the allowances and support for members, and then had to play a big catch-up. And I'm just thinking, is it really realistic to expect the new members, whoever they are, to then come in because and then get the backlash of new members of the Fire Authority vote themselves an increase, rather than actually dealing with some of it today, so that we're all dealing with it, for want of a better phrase, with clean hands, so that we're voting for something that we don't actually necessarily have any benefit in. Because I do think just as we want equality and diversity from the staff and the firefighters, it's also terribly important that we have a competitive remuneration scheme for members, because we want working people, younger people, women, people that are running small businesses and things, to be able to take the time to come on to the Fire Authority. So I just want a clarification on that, because I think otherwise we could end up in stasis, or and then suddenly creep into a period of when things get frozen again, and for all the reasons I've talked about.
Councillor Hannaford, from my perspective, this isn't about freezing allowances. It's simply taking forward the current rate into the new financial year for the authority. I'm just going to ask the clerk to clarify that point, because I believe we are on an automatic increase level according to pay levels within the service. So if I could call on the clerk, please.
That's right, Chair, and I think the point that you were making with regards to any new administration that might come in after the elections was perhaps whether or not they might take a different view on things like the special responsibility allowances rather than the basic allowances. The allowances only come forward annually as per the statutory requirement. So bring this forward again to the authority would be December next year, or possibly even February in 2022, which is before the start of the next financial year. So just because there potentially could be a large change in membership of the Fire Authority in June next year after the county council elections, we would not be bringing the scheme of allowances forward for another review prior to the end of the year. I think the point you were making, Chair, was that would be for the authority itself to determine if the new membership felt that this was an issue that they wanted to look at. They would ask officers to bring forward a paper for consideration at an appropriate meeting. But just to give confirmation, in our forward plan of business, that wouldn't feature unless we were asked to do it.
And that was precisely my point, Mr. Pearson. Thank you very much indeed. Don't forget, members, that we are currently going through a review of our governance arrangements. So within that, there might well be some changes that would come forward in the new authority as opposed to this outgoing one. Again, I've had no one indicate that they wish to speak. I have nothing further to add on this one, so I was going to...
Chair, Councillor Brazil has indicated he wished to speak in the chat box.
Oh, sorry, I haven't seen that. Councillor Brazil, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you. Yeah, just to say that I'm slightly disappointed that we're not taking option 2 in B, which is the payment to members who've non-exec members of commercial services. I can't. I'm struggling to understand why we shouldn't. We get an independent consultant to come in to say what they think we should pay. They give us a recommendation, and then we ignore it, which I think is rather disappointing. So I'm afraid I can't support that, and I would, and I think that we should move to B(2) as per the independent consultant's recommendation.
Understand the point of view you're putting forward. The rationale from my perspective of keeping it at the current level is the workload that is going on for those 2 non-exec directors in helping stabilise the legacy debts that the organisation had incurred, and stabilising it in the sense of taking it forward with the amount of workload that is coming down the pipeline, more of which I think we're probably going to hear of in a minute, but fully accept the point that you're making. If there is nobody else, Clark.
Chair, thank you. Just as a point of procedure, I think we need to ask Councillor Brazil, is he formally moving that as an amendment to the recommendation?
Yeah, I'll happily move that as an amendment to the recommendation. And
in which case, Chair, you'll need to ask if there's a seconder for that amendment.
And do we have a seconder? I see no seconder, so I'm sorry that has fallen. I'm then going to go to the vote on this. So,
Chair, David Thomas had asked to speak, I believe.
He came on, but
happy with to withdraw.
Thank you. So, as this is an important item, we need clarity on how we're going to vote on this one. So I'm going to ask the clerk, should we have a roll call, or should we go to those against, those for and those against?
Chair, there is always the option to have a roll call. What I would suggest, just in terms of pragmatic terms, that you could ask if any members are voting against or wish to abstain, on the basis that everybody else then is indicating they're voting for, rather than going through a roll call. But it's entirely your call as chair how you wish to conduct that.
If members are happy, we will then go to anybody against. They could indicate, please, verbally or...
Councillor Brazil has indicated a thumbs down, so I'm taking that that's a vote against.
I'm not seeing that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. I'm against.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julian. And could I ask, are there any abstentions?
Yeah, there's one. It's Percy Price.
Thank you, Percy. So that is clearly carried. Thank you very much indeed, members, for that. That then brings us on to item 10. Before I call the Vice Chairman to move item 10, I'm going to suggest to members that we have a 15-minute break to come back into the next meeting. But as soon as we're all here, we will start the meeting.
Chairman, it's Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff.
I've just got one little thing I'd like to present, if I may, please.
Go ahead.
From the crew of Portmere Close, Exmouth, who have been together for 25 years, they would like to wish Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service officers, firefighters, staff and authority members and their families a very happy and safe Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Members, thank you very much, Councillor Trail. I didn't hold that earlier in the meeting, which I could have done at this item because of the rather sad start we had to the meeting. So now, could I call on the Vice Chairman, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure whether this is an appropriate way to follow Jeff's contribution, but can I move the recommendation that in accordance with Section 100A, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, press and public, with the exception of those representatives of the Board of Red 1 Limited, be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph X of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended to the Act, namely information relating to the financial and business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So I move that, Chair.
Are we all in agreement? Thank you very much indeed. It's now 22:12. I suggest that we try and get back in as soon as we can. I will definitely start at 9:12. Give members an opportunity to fill up their copy map. Okay, see you all in a minute. Thank you very much indeed, officers, for your presentations this morning. It was very worthwhile, and wishing you all a very happy and prosperous new year.
Thank you, Chair.
So happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, everyone.